Okay, good morning, everybody. TG here. Let's see. I got you guys up on the social and record button. There we go in Simpler. So good to go there. And welcome to everybody. We remembered that it's going to be a holiday week. We have Thanksgiving on Thursday, so no market there. And then Friday is going to be called a half day. It's closed 3 hours early. We're also running some sales. So, guys always come in here, buy the dip and buy the sales. And the code is BF 2025 for Black Friday 2025. So, guys, I think some of my stuff is for sale. And we have a bunch of other stuff at Simpler Trading for sale if you guys want to go look around for it as well. Okay, so let's dive in here a little bit. Let's see. I do have a few trades on. I did try to put on a day trade this morning and I got out for break even. Looks like it would be up a little bit. It was a little bit challenging for the market direction this morning because, we were kind of up a little bit, then we were down, and then it kind of recovered, popped up, came back down, and now it's trying to kind of crawl a little bit higher. So it just felt like for the day trade, maybe it was better to just kind of get out, break even, call it good. I'll show you what I'm seeing out here and why this was a little bit challenging this morning. The internals are, yeah, they're bullish, but they're not very strong bullish. You can see the ticks, yeah, they're above zero, but there was like a really big dip on the ticks back here. I think that was when we had price right there on the SPX pull back into the 2-minute 50 SMA. Other than that, order flow, it's just not much going on. It kind of feels like a holiday week. Yeah, there's just not a lot pushing the market here. And then you can see advanced decline. It's up. That's good. I'm happy to see that. It does also seem to be a little bit of a rotation going on out there in the fact that we have the tech area is still kind of recovering from being hit over the last few weeks, and then the it seems a rotation into kind of retail in a way. I'll show you guys some more about that. I've got a list of tickers that are actually doing quite well. So it's kind of hard to actually see that those were the ones that were going to be succeeding this week, especially after the rebound from last week. I'm kind of leaning towards maybe the idea that the market is now feeling a little bit better about rate cuts. Like if you come over here and you look at the bottom, this rate cut has now come up to almost an 85% likelihood. That is a big change from 34%, I want to say, on Thursday. So the market is feeling better about the idea of rate cuts. And so small caps, retail, things like that are starting to come back. And then what we're looking for is to see if the tech sector can kind of come back, the AI sector, or if they're still feeling a little bit nervous about the whole AI situation. Like right now, you can actually see Nvidia is down, and I think that's because Nvidia is now starting to feel some competition from Google, and Google is actually doing quite well. So let me kind of show you guys a little bit out there. If we look at the SPX versus say the IWM, IWM is doing great today. I was expecting the IWM and most things to do well yesterday, which we did. Yesterday was a good day for us. We had a few trades on. We took some profits. We exited our put credit spread, so we had a good day with that. But really, the big thing is the continuation today is in the small caps like the IWM, and you can see the RSP. You can see that one's all nice up big too. But then you flip it on the other side and you go look at SMH, and SMH is down and trying to recover. Now, Emil, you and I were talking earlier in the chat, and when I was looking at my day trade today, because I put on a put credit spread, basically when the market had gotten back over the 2-minute 50, I'll show you guys that again, and I was looking for the market to go up. I think it might. Gamma is kind of calling for 67.30, maybe even a little bit higher, and right now we're at 67.20. So that's why I went long, and I thought, okay, the small caps are up, the equal weights are up, the S&P 493. The thing that's really keeping the market down are some of the FANG stocks and then mostly the semiconductors. And if you look at the SMH and you can see how it's down, I thought, okay, well, if the SMH, if Nvidia can just stop going down and actually just bounce up a little bit or revert back to the mean, then that should allow the SPX to come up too. And it just was struggling. So that's why I decided to get out, break even, just kind of figure the market's not moving too much on some of these bigger names. And so I think that's what's happening. If you come here and you look at the lower time frame on the SMH, you can see that it was really down this morning. It did right here recover, and then it's kind of been neutral, and then it's finally kind of popping up a little bit. It's still not out of the woods. We still have resistance here on the 5 minute and kind of neutral on the 15. So it's a little bit hard to tell what's going on here. Claudia, yeah, the EMAs. The EMAs that I use are the 8 EMA and the 21 EMA. And if you look here, my 8 EMA is the blue line, and my 21 EMA is call it the orange line. I know it's kind of tough to tell whether it's orange or salmon or red or something like that, depending on your screen color. But just know that they're pretty much always next to each other. So it's just the 8 and 21 EMAs. All right, so we got that for SMH, and you can look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA has definitely been struggling, and that's really what's kind of taking the semiconductors, the SMH down like that. And as I said, I was kind of looking for this to come back. It's doing that a little bit. It is, I think, very oversold. There was kind of a gap this morning. Price was pretty far away from these moving averages. And so really, if price can just kind of come back up here, I think that would kind of help the S&P come up a little bit. And then you can even see AMD was down a bit too. Perhaps it's coming into a double bottom. So this is why I'm like, a little bit on the fence as far as where we're going to go. I do think that the market, it's supposed to be a bullish week. And I do think the market was pretty oversold last week. So we went long, and, it's working. And, we're looking at this. I think could be a double bottom, could be considered oversold. And I still think there's a lot of room for AMD to at least bounce to the upside. Now, if that doesn't happen, then we're looking at bear flags, and then we're going to see some more weakness in through this. But I kind of feel like, we'll see if we can start getting these things to kind of find some lows and just start to drift back up a little bit. The only other challenge is that if we look at the IWM and the RSP, these things are getting extended. So obviously there is a huge difference in rotation between, say, this IWM small caps and the semiconductors. So at some time in the future, that rotation could always kind of come back the other way. Because if you look at the IWM, I'm kind of looking at this and saying, well, I'm not sure how much higher this can go before we actually get a more substantial pullback. I mean, this is starting to come into areas that I look at resistance, and right here at the daily 50. And then you can look here, just look left. It's kind of right back into the meat of its prior price consolidation and all that. So I could see that pulling back at some point, and then maybe the money will kind of rotate back into the semiconductors, and maybe they'll move up. So, and then of course you have the SPX kind of stuck in the middle, and that's why the SPX just isn't really moving today. You've got this push pull between the small caps and the mega caps and the semiconductors, and it's just kind of not doing much. Yeah, Claudia, the other are the 50 and the 200. So the 50 is this magenta color line, and these colors are always the same on all my time frames. And then you can see the 200 is, I would say, more orange, maybe salmon colored, maybe orange, But you can see here, this is the 50 SMA, and this is the 200 SMA. So yep, you got my moving averages down. So yeah, the market is slightly bullish. As I said, I did have on a day trade this morning, got out break even because it just didn't seem like it was going to go very much. Even that, it's still kind of just barely crawling up today. It is moving. We'll see how that kind of goes. The challenge, as I keep saying this morning, is that so far this has been a pullback, and we're just trading a bounce. And this is what I've been trying to be very, very clear with everybody, even in the Moxie room, is like, we're still kind of in bounce territory, meaning we could still be in a lot of chop. We're coming up into potential resistance. And then, once you run into that resistance, then you pull back, and you're just going to be in this kind of noisy environment. So I don't really have high expectations for this Thanksgiving week, even though it's supposed to be bullish. So the indices may not really do too much. However, if you look at some of these names that I'm going to show you here, let's see, ZIM. I heard that one was kind of, yeah, you can see ZIM is actually doing pretty well. The challenge here is I don't like earnings. So that was kind of right in the middle of earnings. But yeah, ZIM, I think they're a job placement company, or maybe it's shipping. Maybe I'm trying to think, what was the other one? There was a company that started with a Z, and they do job placements. Anyway, So ZIM is doing well, and then Ross doing well, but again on earnings. So interesting to see that and to note that. TJX, so TJ Maxx, also doing well today. They had some moves for earnings, kind of came back down, but actually they're doing pretty well overall. You can see a lot of volume coming into that. And then sticking with the retail theme, I saw ON is doing pretty well. And this might actually be looking good. This might actually be in a place where if you guys were interested in doing something about it, I think this could actually work because here's earnings. And you can see this chart has been really, really terrible for quite some time. Okay. It's been really rough. But now you can see that it had earnings and suddenly it came back. And while you don't want to chase the gap, look what's happening. It's basically pulled back into potential support. And if this low is in and it actually starts moving up, then this is a good spot. So I think ON might actually have some opportunities. It still has work to do, but maybe the low is actually in, and maybe this thing starts to trend higher in the near term. So that's something I'm watching. Along with that, Nike. Again, not always the most exciting names, but I'm trying to show you guys of some of the stuff that I'm seeing out there. This could be what I call a elf shoe, basically a double bottom. Kind of looking in through there. There's a trampoline move right there on the hourly. And if we zoom out, you could see also why maybe in the big picture that there could be something happening here because double bottom, that's a weekly double bottom. So there could be something here as well. Yeah, so just kind of some areas out there. Let's see, Nike. What else do I got on my list? Lulu, again, sticking with the kind of the retail thing. Not not the most exciting, but maybe this thing is done going down. So you can kind of look at that, and it is having a pretty decent day over the last few days. So let's and I think there were I had a couple. Oh, again, crazy with the retail names. Abercrombie and Fitch. Now again, they had earnings, so I'm not going to be trading earnings. But I did mention this to the Moxie room. I don't know, like a week ago. I was just kind of pointing out that I thought this was coming into a level, which you can see here, and then look at this thing just explode on earnings. Once again, I'm not a huge fan of trading earnings. It's obviously a roll of the dice, and you would have had to have basically gone in as price was coming down and rolling the dice that this was going to work on earnings. So again, not kind of the best thing that you could do. But now that it's happened, maybe now you can start keeping this on your list and say, oh, wow, big double bottom on the weekly chart and up on earnings. So maybe something's starting to turn and work for Abercrombie and Fitch, which along with that, Kohl's, look at KSS. Once again, pretty challenging, very choppy stock. Yeah, you could say it was flagging, but it was pulling back right up until its earnings. And again, it exploded on earnings. So maybe there's kind of something going on here that we can kind of pay attention to. Maybe there's something to work with. I don't know. But I just find it interesting that, yeah, some of these retail names are actually starting to work. And maybe that's the idea behind rate cuts starting to be a thing again. And so maybe they're kind of being okay with that. Maybe the consumer's okay. And maybe there's just a little bit of a rotation away from the AI situation because maybe some traders are getting a little bit nervous about that. And they're just trying to say, okay, well, where else are we going to go? And they hop into retail. Yeah, so I think that's kind of the short thing from my list as far as that go. Let's see, Kraut. Why not buy ON now? Actually, I think we might be able to. If you wanted to, I think this is looking fairly decent. You could say that there's a very, very, very long-term double bottom from here if you look at that on the monthly or weekly time frame. And you could actually make the argument that perhaps we are setting up an elf shoe on the weekly chart. So here's the leg, here's the heel, that's the arch of the foot, that's the ball of the foot, and then what we're looking for is price to move up. If this can eventually move up, I would actually look for price to maybe hit the weekly 50. That might be a reasonable target to look at. And if you come down here and look at the daily chart, my patterns. This is a trampoline move. So price below the 50, Mox indicator above 0, and price is pulling back into the daily 21 and also back over the daily 50. So sure, if this can get going, then I think maybe something around the hourly 200 could be something. So let's see. Hourly 200 is about let's call it 40, I guess 48, 47 and change. And see, what was that weekly 50? About the same price. So yeah, the weekly 50 and the daily 200 are about the same price. So that would definitely be my first target is if price can go from, let's just do put an X here, from here to roughly here. And if we look left, there's maybe a little bit of a gap right here. And that lines up kind of in this area too. So yeah, if you wanted to trade ON, I would probably target 47 and change. We'll see if that kind of works. Oh, trading all day. Good to see you. Yeah, I've been seeing you in my YouTube comments. So glad to see you're checking in and all that. How you doing? And let's say Luis, ADI. See what's kind of going on there. Yeah, look, earnings. That's the only thing I can kind of say is I like to wait till after earnings because you obviously get some clarity. The market reacts to it, and something like ADI, there has not been there's been no setup. You look at this and you can kind of make the argument that this has been kind of pulling back in a channel. And if you look at the hourly chart, there's really not much to work with. I can kind of start to say that there's this level and some positive divergence here, but with no trend intact and earnings coming up, there's no way that I would be getting into a trade before that. Unless you were already in and kind of had some ideas and whatever. Something like this, you just wait till after earnings. So okay, now the earnings are here and this thing is up strongly, then you have to decide: do you want to chase this, or do you just want to say, hey, this is looking pretty good for the stock. I will see if I can find an entry sometime into the future at maybe a more reasonable spot. And those are some of the equations that you kind of have to run in your head. And then kind of backing out a little bit. If we look at the monthly and weekly, this is actually looking pretty good on the monthly weekly. I usually look at the lower time frames because we're swing traders or a little bit faster. But now that I've backed out, that's looking pretty good. Nice. Let me see if I can draw some lines on here. It's kind of looking interesting. We could I'm seeing there's a little bit of a right there. Kind of see this breakout line, breakout channel. And you could see price has been pulling back or flagging into the monthly 10 and has pulled back into the weekly 50. So I think from a longer term perspective, this chart's actually looking pretty good. The challenge is when you get down to these lower time frames, it's you don't see much because it's a lot of noise right there, kind of in that area, a lot of noise. And finally, you could say that we are breaking out. So I'll write that one down so I can keep looking at it and keep ADI doing something about it. But yeah, Luis, there might be something here. Yeah, very tight squeezes in the daily through the monthly. Yeah, a lot of squeezes. The challenge though, when you get something like this where it's just perpetually squeezed, it just kind of goes from like more squeeze to less squeeze. That's a little bit hard to work with. This one's a little bit better because at least there was a break to where there was no squeeze, and so you can kind of say, okay, it's starting all over again. So yeah, there could be something there. So sure. All right. So let's see. Let me go wrap this up for everybody out on the social medias. I see a bunch of eyeballs out there, so that's good. People tuning in. We got YouTube, X, Facebook, LinkedIn for you guys out there. Just remember, it's Thanksgiving week. We've got a holiday on Thursday. Friday is a shortened day, 3 hours short. Usually traders are away and people are trying to feel good and not have to worry too much about the market on Friday. There have been some times where Friday is actually kind of a down day and it's a little uncomfortable, but I would like to not have to tune into the market. I would love to be able to just enjoy hanging out with my family. I'll be at my parents' place. So I'll wake up at some point. I'll check in with the market, check in with you guys, and we'll see how that goes. And hopefully the market's just kind of behaving on Friday is what I'm hoping for. But remember that we're kind of in this awkward situation to where we have pulled back for quite some time. We are bouncing, but we're really kind of still bouncing up into potential resistance. And we have what today, and then we have tomorrow, and then we have Friday. And now we got to kind of figure out what the market's going to do. So we could still see some challenges, some choppiness. Expect that. We're not in super clear territory. Maybe some individual stocks are looking pretty decent like that, and you can go from there. Other than that, for those of you in the social media, let me come over here. I want to make sure you guys know we've got sales, we've got Christmas stuff coming up, like, Black Friday. This is when you can kind of pick up some good deals. So we do have a few things for me for sale. Also, the rest of our traders and some products at Simpler Trading. Just remember, code is BF 2025, which is Black Friday 2025. Come over to simplertrading.com. All right, guys, let me sign off with everybody on the social media.